So we have our egg. I'm just going to grab a bowl with a strainer. This one's a little bit big, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to strain it into the strainer and then put it in this little bowl, which is, you can do it that way, or if you have a really small strainer, you can just take that strained egg and just drop it right in your poaching water, or right into your frying pan if you want. Sometimes that's easier, sometimes this is easier. You know, just trial and error, see what you like, what works for you. So literally all we're going to do is take this egg, put it in our strainer here, let it sit for just a minute. And this one has a pretty firm kind of center white, so this might actually take a second. Yeah, this one's not super wet. Actually, I think most of that liquid, since there's not a lot of it, most of it's actually being caught in the mesh, believe it or not. So we'll let that kind of just... roll it out, and there we go. We've got our egg that has some of that loose white removed, and it did actually, looks like it just stuck right into the mesh. You can let it sit there for a little while. Obviously I don't want to take too long on the video, but what you don't want to do is let it sit there for too long, because it'll start to actually set into the mesh, and then when you try to get it out, it won't really release very well. So if you want to use a little bowl, I think that's great. Otherwise, just make sure you crack it relatively soon before you're about to cook it. But yeah, there you go. So we're ready to make our fried eggs. And first, let's talk about our station, getting ourselves set up. What we want to be thinking about is mise en place, which is having everything ready to go where it needs to be, so that when we're cooking, we can focus on the most important task, which is making sure that we're cooking our eggs, in this case, just right. So we don't want to be rushing all over the place. You don't want to be distracted. You don't want to be missing something, grabbing something, not having everything that you need. So we want to have our space set up so we don't have to move. All I have to do is this, and I have everything that I need. So what we have is, over here we've got a little tray. I love using little quarter sheet trays or half sheet trays to hold all of the things that I want to have at the ready. I've got a little bit of fine salt, a little bit of coarse Maldon salt for finishing, a little bit of fresh cracked black pepper, our butter, and our egg already strained and in a little cup, and silicone spatula, which is key for cooking eggs. It's just really gentle, especially if you're going to be using non-stick. I'm going to be using stainless steel, but if you're using a non-stick skillet, you never want to use anything, basically never anything harder than a silicone spatula. And actually, I prefer not to use non-stick, just because the Teflon, if it does get scratched, it's not good for you. If you do have scratched Teflon pans, I really recommend you just get rid of them. You can get one non-stick skillet. Use soft utensils. Keep it wrapped in a towel and be really baby it. Breakfast cooks tend to have their egg pans, and they will not be happy if they see you doing something to abuse them. So take very, very good care of your nonstick pans if you are going to use them. Otherwise, there's blue steel, which is kind of like really thin carbon steel, which is great for eggs. Or you can also just use stainless steel. It's just the technique is going to be a little bit more important when you're using stainless steel than something that's a little bit more naturally nonstick. So everything I'm going to show you could do obviously with a nonstick skillet even easier, but I figured I would show you guys with a stainless steel because that is what I prefer most of the time. So first thing we're going to do, actually we're going to take a little bit of butter, we're going to put it in our pan. The reason I like using butter with eggs is that butter actually it tells you what temperature it is. Oil can be really tricky because your oils can have a smoke point anywhere between 350 and 500. So your oil could be 100 degrees, it could be 400 degrees. You don't really know where it's where it is. With butter, at 212 degrees, all of the water that's in that butter starts to evaporate. 212 degrees, obviously, the temperature that water boils at. Butter is about 12 to 15% water, so once that starts to evaporate, you start browning your butter. And we don't really want, if a little bit of brown is okay, but we want to keep the butter away from browning as much as possible. You can see that the butter kind of starts to sizzle and kind of foam, and then after it foams a little bit, it starts to stop. And if we let this keep on going, it's going to just get brown. So we're going to keep controlling the temperature by lifting the pan off of the heat. We have two ways of controlling heat here. We could just move the pan right off of the burner. We have this, actually a gas pedal right here, right, where we can actually kind of control the amount of heat we're applying. So we want to use both of those techniques to control our temperature. So that butter is right where we want it. I don't want to leave it on the flame because I'm worried it's going to brown. So I'm going to kind of get myself ready. I got my temperature where my pan where I want it. I'm going to drop my egg in here and let it start to go. And then we're listening. We want it to be a gentle kind of a gentle sizzle. It's starting to get a little bit out of shape. You could just kind of take your spatula and clean this up. This egg, it looks like it was a little bit softer than the one that I used previously, so it's gonna be not quite as perfect, but that's okay. And then we kind of just want to move it around. Let that butter's created a barrier here, right? So we really just want to encourage it to keep that barrier so that it fries nice. And it starts to get a little bit dark. You can always drop the temperature a little bit. We want it to be a little bit crispy on the outside, but we don't want it to burn. And then what I like to do is just take a little bit of salt, kind of hit it with a little bit of salt and pepper while it's in the pan. It's really soft right now, so it'll kind of just absorb this. It looks nice too. So here it's starting to kind of pop a little bit too much. I'm going to drop that temp a little bit. Also, I'm going to lift up a little bit so we get a little bit, lose a little bit of heat. And what we're looking for is we want to make sure that the white is completely set. You see how it's still a little bit soft here? We want the white to be completely set, and we want the yolk to be cooked a little bit. We want it to have that kind of jammy consistency again, but we don't want to overcook it. So use the heat that's in the pan and in the butter to do your cooking, and you can just kind of keep moving it back and forth, controlling your heat. You want it gently to cook here. Right, see, we're starting to get that nice color around the outside. I like that. You can also just keep your butter at a lower temperature. You can keep the whole pan at a lower temperature and not get that crispy browning on the outside if you want. It's up to you. So, see, it's still releasing here, which is great. Got some nice color. That white is just about set. I think we're pretty close here. Again, we don't want to get it too over. We don't want to overcook it. Okay, I think I'm going to cut that heat. Just let it ride for a second with the heat that's already in there. And then there's lots of different ways you can do this. We can kind of just slide it out of the pan. We could also just kind of lift it out. We could, grab a spatula. I'm just going to see if I can do this. Let's see. Let's just do this. So there is our egg, and it's got. Sometimes you'll get if the yolk or the white drains off a little bit nicer, you get just like a little bit of a cleaner kind of a shape to it. That's not bad though. It's definitely not that kind of big, weird, thin egg. But you see how we got like a little bit of color in here, which is great. You can smell the butter's a little bit nutty, which is really nice. But it's it's got some. Good crispiness, but it's not overcooked. And then if we look at our yolk here, it's just a little bit of a touch, and it just kind of runs right off Beautiful for toast. Just dip your toast right in there. And yeah, that is perfect. So cool. There we go. Fried egg.